Yay!
Yay!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another week of LoFi History. Woo! Now, something's different. Oh no! Something's very different. Good introduction, Marie. So, Marie, when when a princess or someone from ye olden times would drop their tiara, I mean, was that just a huge social faux pas?
Yes.
Quick answer, yes.
Yes. It's not good.
Well, welcome to LoFi History, Marie. I thoroughly enjoyed that introduction. So, if you somehow don't know Marie, perhaps you are watching on Twitch and you haven't checked out our Facebook and YouTube, then Marie is our director of the Ada Mae Ivester Education Center. So she leads our educational programs here at the History Center. And you are also quite the fashionista here. And basically everything that you wear on our live streams has been made by you, including today.
Including this. So this is actually an outfit that I kind of forgot about because it's not historically accurate, so I don't really wear it for any of our programming here, but it's still in my cage because this is where all of my costumes have come to live. This is more of a Ren Fair outfit, historically inspired. But actually, the reason I made this outfit that I'm wearing is I played Milady de Winter in the Three Musketeers in my high school, which was so much fun. I got to use the most weapons.
Lady de Winter was a murderous temptress.
It was fantastic.
She was very sneaky.
I also had the highest body count on stage.
I'm sure, yes.
Including my own.
Yes.
Nice.
But it was a lot of fun. I got to die with, we had actually a person from the Shakespeare Tavern come that I had known from a theater camp come and teach us how to fight with rapiers.
Fun.
So that's how I died by D'Artagnan's sister, who they just added to this play for no apparent reason.
She's not in the book.
No, she's not.
Oh.
But she killed me. Or Milady de Winter, I should say.
But Milady de Winter was supposed to have her head chopped off.
Yeah, I got stabbed.
Oh.
Instead. I know, but one of the fun things about this dress is this was...
You can still see the bloodstains.
Yeah, yes. I wore this to the ball, the ball scene, and then after the ball scene, I got into a scuffle with D'Artagnan in this adaptation of the play. And he actually rips off one of the sleeves and then reveals the brand on her arm, the fleur-de-lis. So I had to. I costumed the entire play.
That's a huge feat.
Yes.
Wow.
I was also Milady de Winter and also president of our Thespian Society. It was a very small school, and I kind of helped run the drama department. Yes.
That's awesome.
So I had to figure out how to rip it off and then attach it back every night. So I used magnets.
Magnets? I thought you were going to say Velcro, but magnets is genius.
Yes.
Yeah, because you don't hear the rip, right?
Yeah. I mean, they wouldn't have heard the rip because it's a stage thing anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But I went to a costuming class and they were like, so for our giveaway things, we use magnets. I'm like, that is genius.
Yeah, because Velcro might hold on too well.
Mm-hmm.
Aha! Aha! Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it has since been secured, so I don't have magnets on me anymore. So I can't demonstrate because that was it was used for another play where it didn't need to rip off.
Right.
And people were afraid that it would actually rip off, so we had to actually secure it.
Well, see, I didn't know that non-historical costumes were an option. This opens up a whole new opportunity.
Historically inspired.
Oh, they're not. They're not an option. We have to wear historically.
Okay.
Historically inspired.
Historically inspired?
Yeah, in fact, let me give a few shout outs
Because this was
here.
Milady de Winter 1600s, but not
Yes.
it's not actually. In my Anne Boleyn necklace.
That Miss Chris on Twitch says, historically adequate was a term I heard during your telethon.
Yes.
Yes, during your fashion program, Fashion Through the Centuries. And hello, that Miss Chris. Thanks for joining us on Twitch. Also, shout out to Fried, one of our returning Twitch viewers, as well as Hat Mouse. Welcome back, Hat Mouse. And welcome to anyone who's joining us for the first time on LoFi History. So this is your chance to ask historians any question that you want. You've got Marie and Glenn, both have quite a wide range of historical knowledges and can answer your questions. So if you want to chat any question for Glenn and or Marie, please let us know, and I'll monitor the chat, make sure we get to that. Nice little rhyme there. But Glenn, now we know a little bit about what Marie is wearing today. Glenn, what are you wearing today?
Oh, it's not terribly exciting. It's just a standard old 18th century men's outfit with it's sort of a middling to upper, well, I would say middle upper class, because I have the poofy sleeves, as they say, the poofy shirt in Seinfeld parlance, and a cravat here, and then a waistcoat, brocade waistcoat, and then just a coat, a single-breasted coat. Again, just classic 18th century. This is what the founding fathers and folks fighting in the American Revolution would have worn. No frills, but it's actually quite comfortable. It's so funny. I've told these ladies before, this may come as a shock and surprise to many of you, but I don't like to wear like modern suits and coats and ties and things. I only, if I'm wearing one, so one of them will say, "Oh, are you talking to a donor today? Or is there a funeral or something like that?" But I don't like to wear them. And yet, when it comes, I can't wear a modern tie. That's constricting. But something that goes all the way up to my chin, wow, this is a historic comfort. Doesn't seem to bother me. So dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
I want to be a princess.
I want to be a Mandalorian.
Yeah. I actually just started watching The Mandalorian, and I'm really digging it. But is there any history connection you can make to the Mandalorian? Well, the helmet looks pretty, I don't know, connected to some kind of era. That's as far as I can go. That looks like one of the helmets Glenn had.
I mean, a good helmet is a good helmet, with the design. You could say it's close. At least it suggests the shape of one of the ancient Greek helmets. I need to bring one of those in here sometime.
That'd be cool.
During warmer weather, maybe I'll wear the Greek outfit.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that would be fun.
That would be cool. But it's nothing terribly historical. But the character archetypes in Mandalorian, I think, are very close to the historic theatrical archetypes. Right? They're those commedia dell'arte stock character kind of things. And
we're going to go into theater history today?
Oh, why not?
Let's do it.
Why not? If only we had someone here who could talk about theater history.
If only there were two people in the room that had a
theater
background.
That's never
Glenn,
happened before.
That's not historically
It's
adequate.
not. I don't know. Where's it?
It's over
it's
there.
over. Excuse me just a second.
Well, in the meantime, while Glenn is so rudely answering his phone, he is the executive director, so I guess, phone calls are allowed this time. But that Miss Chris has a question for you. Glenn.
We've done this 6 months now. That's the first time that's ever happened.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it actually is.
It actually is. I'm so sorry, folks.
It's all good. But that Miss Chris asked, Glenn, how did you become an author? Was it difficult to transition from live history teaching to writing it down?
Well, you're probably talking about my the book Hall County in World War II, which is an Arcadia Press book, and it actually wasn't that difficult. Because and I say this, it sounds like a pejorative, but it's not. Arcadia Press deals mostly in picture books. It shows historic images, and historic images are remarkably fascinating. And the great thing about Arcadia is they go to different localities and they will publish, image works that are about specific areas, specific towns or counties across the entire United States. And most publishers would say, well, there's no interest in a Hall County book to a national audience. We're not going to publish that. But Arcadia does this. And so I got the idea really because working here at the Northeast Georgia History Center, I have access to a lot of stuff over here in the archives. And one day, many, many years ago, I was going through some boxes and I stumbled upon stacks of photographs. And these photographs were of Hall County in World War II. And it was something, I don't know how they'd gotten there. There was no label about, who took these pictures. If they're from one source, I don't think that they are. And so I took that box of pictures, along with a few that the local Hall County Library holds, and a few more that I got from different different parts of our archives, different scrapbooks and things like that, and compiled them and worked with Arcadia to publish this book. So it really it was kind of easy. Going through, you select the images, and then you try to put the images sort of into some sort of categorization or chronological order or thematic order or something like that, and then you just describe each image and tie them together to tell a larger story, or at least that's what I did. So it was really fun, and it was a topic that I love. It's local history, it's World War II. To be honest, the hardest part is Arcadia, to make their model work, has a very formulaic approach to layout. Right? They welcome all sorts of images and writing, but the layout of the books sort of has to follow a very specific model. And so trying to get the chapters to end on the right page, or the photo to be on the right page in the number of photos I used, that was the tricky part. That was almost math.
Math is hard.
Math is tricky.
I remember numbers. I don't do things with them.
But yeah, so thank you for that. And it is available in our museum shop online if anyone would be interested in taking a look at that.
Sure
Great
is.
Christmas gift.
Now, going back to helmets, the game czar is wondering about were the whole stereotypical horned Viking helmet. Is that a real thing? Did they actually have helmets like that?
Nope.
Well, there you have it.
And now that has come from a couple of sources. There is one, you may know about this one. There is one Norse, what they think is a funerary marker that goes a little bit past the Viking era and actually shows a picture of, or a carving with someone with a helmet with what looks like horns coming out of either side. That's the only evidence we have. But I think the problem is that the Victorians picked.
Those Victorians.
If only we had someone who knew a lot about Victorian era England here with us today. So the Victorians got this image in their head. They were very much about reimagining and reappreciating and reliving the English Middle Ages, and so they got this idea of helmets with horns, and this carried through to Wagnerian opera and things like that. So that's why it's come to us today that Vikings had horns on their helmets. But every other piece of iconography and whatever carvings or illustrations we have, or even the sagas that describe them, or even the archaeological evidence, shows zero evidence of a helmet with horns on it from that period and that area. Geographically.
Now, what would a Viking helmet look like?
Oh, I wish I had my example. So it's called a conical helmet, right? Imagine sort of a cone, not a straight up like ice cream cone, but perhaps has a little more round to it. Comes up to a point, comes down like this, and then is flat across the bottom. Some of them would have what's called a nasal, projecting down from the brow point down past your nose, which was partially protective, partially for looks. There are other Scandinavian helmets that have that same skull shape, but also have what we call oculars, which actually are kind of close to Marie's sunglasses. They're not sunglasses, but they come down, and instead of just the nasal, they basically have little iron steel glasses that kind of protect your face in that area, and they would put brass eyebrows and things like that on it for decoration. So that's what your typical Viking helmet is going to look like.
Okay, nice. I was trying to find an example online.
Look, you know what? The thing is, if you look up Norman helmet, it's going to be basically the same thing.
Okay, Norman helmet.
Because there was a not every helmet in the 10th and 11th centuries were identical.
Right.
But there were very, very strong themes and similarities running through the technology and the the design of defensive wear in that period.
Okay, so is this something like what you're talking about?
That is exactly what I'm talking about.
Nice.
That is a reproduction of the Wenceslas helm, which good King Wenceslas of the Carol, right?
Yeah.
This is attributed, or the original is attributed to him, and is part of the saints' relics that are held in, I can't remember which cathedral there in Germany. But
Oh, that's so neat.
yeah.
Oh, also want to say hello to the Fantastic Plastics on Twitch. Thank you for joining us. Good to see y'all. And Fried says, speaking of Vikings, were there really berserkers? Maybe you know what that means. Did they wear
yes.
bear fur? And if so, did they have to kill the bear by themselves?
No. Again. So there was the idea, I'm trying to think of a good modern metaphor. The idea of a berserker, a bear skin, right, that someone would wear. A berserker was someone who is supposed to go absolutely mad with battle rage. And there's iconography of this. There's the Lewis chessmen have a berserker who's holding a shield, and he looks like this. His teeth are hanging over the edge of the shield because there were guys named shield biters, and that was the same thing as a berserker. As close as we can tell, the idea of a berserker to Scandinavians was sort of the same thing as when we say, oh, a Rambo, right? Watching, especially Rambo First Blood Part 2, you know, when he doesn't have his shirt on, he's got a headband, he's got a machine gun in each arm, and he's going through and he's winning every battle because he's that tough. Well, we have that archetype in our head. You knew exactly what I meant when I said Rambo, didn't you?
Never seen the movie, but I know
you know.
who he is.
You know who he is. You know when I say Rambo, that image pops in your head. In reality, sorry to say, folks, there is no Rambo.
Aww.
That is not the way our soldiers fight, but it's that archetype. Sort of the same thing with the Scandinavians. There was the idea of, oh, that guy's going to go berserk. He's a berserker when he gets into battle. Not really. It's just that's sort of their popular imagery. And the Vikings are actually really good at that.
So, I mean, obviously the word like going berserk, is that specifically going back to that idea?
It is. Yeah, that's going back to that idea. Is that, you know, going berserk or a berserker. That's exactly what that goes back to.
Yeah, so basically just like the game czar says, so a soldier who was in the zone when he's fighting.
Yeah, kinda. You know, people, you know, the white hot battle rage, and they could kill their friend as well as their foe. Maybe, you know, you don't want to go to war with a guy like that, though, do you?
No.
You don't. You don't.
Not really.
You don't want to go to war with Rambo, because if you'll notice in the movies, all of Rambo's buddies die.
Oh, well,
Rambo may make it out.
Way to spoil it for me.
Sorry, spoiler alert. Also, someone's probably going to catch me when I said that there is no such thing as a real Rambo. They got the name for the guy, John S. Rambo, from the First Blood movie, because that name is actually on the Vietnam Memorial as someone who was killed in action in Vietnam. John Rambo is actually on the Vietnam Memorial.
A little trivia there.
So.
And Fried says, but do you want to go to war with a guy wearing bearskin? No one wants to mess with that guy.
Yeah. Just maybe you could just, you know, let him go out in the first 5 minutes and see what he can do. Then everyone else comes and follows him.
Yeah.
You don't want to get in his way.
Now, it's interesting you talking about the idea of Victorians sort of reframing the past. Murray, I'm curious, what other examples are there that you're aware of Victorians sort of re-glorifying, re-romanticizing, reimagining the past?
There's quite a bit. There's the example of course, our director of museum services is doing a full paper on this, but medievalism, where the whole, like you were saying, the whole Middle Ages are kind of reimagined and glorified. Windsor Castle is at its heart a medieval structure, but most of when you think of medieval, or when you think of Windsor Castle, there's only that one little, well, it's quite big, but it's little in compared to the rest of the castle. Part.
The round stone bailey.
Yes. That's really the only part that is from the medieval
the bailey
ages.
of the keep.
that's left. The rest is an imagined, what they thought a medieval castle would look like, but it's like way nicer than any medieval castle that you'll actually visit. So it's like this glorified yet castle looking thing. It's like a palace that kind of looks like a castle on the outside idea, and with little fake slits. What you call
the arrow slits? Yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
that's like the whole. I thought there was a special name for them. But like it has fake arrow slits even that like wouldn't actually be that functional. Like it wouldn't. They're
Right.
not functional, but they're there because they're medieval. So you have this idea of what medieval people look like.
Yeah.
So basically, when I think of that, I think of the entire Windsor Castle idea of when we think like, oh, like pretty medieval castle. It's not. It was made in the early 1800s.
It's sort of like 19th century state-sponsored Renaissance festival.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
that's that's kind of their approach to it.
Wow.
So it's kind of it's historically based, like my outfit,
Yeah.
historically inspired,
Yes. Yes.
but not actually how it would go down.
And they looked to medieval heroes to establish their Englishness. Like Alfred the Great was the penultimate medieval king to the Victorians. Not William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror was, to their eyes, French. And even though that's who Victoria traced her descent to, Victorian England wanted to see itself as this pure England. Part of it's race-based. Part of it is just the desire to be the perfect, unassailable Englishness of it all, right? What can be more English than England? And that's what Anglo-Saxon England was to them. And they just took it, and King Arthur and mashed it together.
It's interesting that you mentioned one of the greats, because Fried asks, there have been many historical figures who got to be called the Great. Which ones were actually great, and who was the greatest?
Oh,
That's a great question. Fry the Great.
oh, for me?
I don't know.
Okay, so I was just watching the TV show called The Great, which is based very, very loosely on the life of Catherine the Great. But I think that it's interesting because she's one of the few great women rulers that is indeed gets to be called the Great. The show is incredibly amusing if you have not watched it.
It's on my list.
It's quite ridiculous, but it's amusing, and it understands that it is
Tongue in cheek.
yes,
Yeah.
and it's not like a true story. It has like it's called The Great with an asterisk, and then like at the bottom of the screen they're like sometimes based on true events. So like I appreciate that they're just like upfront about it.
Yeah.
I can appreciate a movie that's just like, hey, look, it's historically inspired.
Here's what we're doing.
But we're not going with that. And like as long as they're upfront about it, I think like it's fine because they're upfront about it.
Some teachers may still show it in class, but
I
that's
hope not.
the teacher's fault and not the movie maker's fault.
It's a little raunchy to be showing in a classroom.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I hope that doesn't translate. But anyway, so I think she's a very interesting figure from a historical perspective of one that gets to be called the Great.
Great.
Well, for people who are unfamiliar with Catherine the Great, such as myself, give us a little in a nutshell about Catherine the Great.
All right, so my Russian history is not the best, but she took a very how to say this nicely about Russia. Russia is usually a little bit behind Europe in its progressive ideas. And her husband was a little incapable of doing things, such as governing. So she did indeed get rid of him.
As in...
Assassination.
Accidents happen.
Because he was a very poor leader, and there were herself who was like, wow, my husband's an idiot. And she's like, I could rule better. And the interesting about Russia versus other European lines is if if the emperor dies, it goes to the empress versus going to like the emperor's brother or the kid. It goes to the empress. So when she figured that out, she was like, "Yeah, boy, let's get him now, so I can rule."
Really happened.
So she and her husband did things like banning the people wearing beards because he thought that would make them more progressive, like Europe. Because in the fashion that you're going, he's in the fashion of what Catherine the Great time period, which is like 1700s, like mid to late 1700s around. Wearing beards was not fashionable in Europe, but Russia still very much had beards, and they had like very large bushy beards was just very much like the style there. But then Nicholas was like, you know what?
That's such a Russian thing.
Let's be progressive and not wear beards anymore.
It's like you know, at the height of Stalin's Soviet Union, they could not get enough food to feed people, but everyone got a cone of ice cream every Wednesday.
You know?
To show how progressive and like the West they could be. Do you have any bread? No, but here's your vanilla.
Here's your ice cream.
Yum.
Eat the cone.
Clavion says, literally, the fashion police.
Yes.
So Catherine the Great actually did bring progress and was like, you know what? Serfs, let's treat them nice. And
let's encourage industry and trade.
And encourage women's education, because she was a well-educated woman. Most women in Russia they still could not read, as a lot of people in that time. So she was a champion of arts and culture and was actually trying to modernize and make a progressive Russia that was basically catching up with like the rest of Europe.
Yeah.
Now, Eugene on Facebook says, but she had fire balloons. How could she not be a progressive? And I'm sure that's a very good joke, but I don't understand it. Fire balloons?
Well, that's how they used to power balloons.
Oh.
Is they would have a fire underneath the
like hot air balloons.
The bladder.
Oh, like
the
a
bladder.
hot air
Yes,
balloon.
I think he means like a hot air balloon.
Nice.
I think.
Nice. That is pretty cool.
But when you do say fire balloons, my imagination does go to like balloons that are just
made on fire.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a very fun idea.
Yeah.
But
so then now we need to hear about the Great.
The Great. But I cannot think off the top of my head of another female to whom the Great appellation is applied. Let's see. We've got Alfred the Great. I already mentioned that. There's Alexander the Great, Peter the Great, Ivan the Terrible. I think
usually they are in that one.
Bob the Okay.
Bob, Glenn the Mediocre. Glenn the Adequate. That's what I want to be known as. Glenn the Adequate. I'm gonna have to say that of all the greats, Alexander is probably the most deserving of that. Not only for his military conquest of the Persian Empire and creating a unified Macedonian body politic and defeating the Persians and expanding his empire, but what he really did. So usually the Great is given to conquerors and things like that, which he did. He was a fantastic military leader, but what he did is he brought the classical Greek culture and learning and Aristotelian methodology and things like that to all the areas that he conquered. So he basically creates this and this is when it happens. The Socratic method and Greek philosophy and all that sort of stuff and the art is sort of held within the city-states of Greece until Alexander comes along. When Alexander comes along and he expands out to all these territories, he takes that everywhere he goes. And even though his empire more or less crumbled just a few years after his death, that stuff stayed. And in all those places he went, those ideas and that way of thinking and looking at the world stayed and went with it. And that had a profound and almost immeasurable impact on the world we live in today. So I'll give Alexander, one of the first greats, the appellation of the Great.
Nice.
The greatest of the greats, if I had to pick.
Now, speaking of Rome, the Fantastic Plastics are wondering about the architecture in DC and Paris being based on Roman styles. And I know historical architecture is a particular favorite of you, Marie, so take it away.
Yes. All right. So America liked to think of itself as this new democracy. So it modeled itself after Greek and Rome. Now, an interesting thing though, we have a lot more Greek influences than we do Roman influences when you look at exact buildings. So we have, let's go with the White House, which is actually not really Greek or Roman. It's more Palladian style of architecture.
What does that mean?
So Palladian, it's a certain style of architecture that it was really popular in the 1700s,
Okay.
which it's very classical, so it draws from Greek and Roman, but it's not reproduction.
It originated in Italy.
Okay. Cool.
So, but it does have very much like the temple fronts of things. So when you think of the Supreme Court building, it kind of looks like a temple. It has a temple front, which means it has like the triangle with the pediment, and then it has the columns. It has the different orders of columns. You have your Ionic, you have your Doric, you have Tuscan, you have Corinth, which is from Corinth, Greece. Fun story about Corinthian Columns. So the Corinthian columns are the fancy ones that kind of look flowery with vines at the top. So, but if you think about it, this is a story. There's not necessarily a historical base to this, but I think it's a nice story. It helps you remember which ones are Corinthians, or Corinthian columns. The style is said to have originated that there was a basket left on the grave of a child that then vines grew through, and they thought it looked so nice that like it was a pleasing look that then they modeled it to go on the top of the column. So when you think about this, we're going far into architecture theory. You asked for it. So when you think about Corinthian columns, they're usually the idea is a child. And when you think of Ionic, that's more of a woman and learning. And when you think of Doric or Tuscan, it's male and military. So you see a lot of, on military buildings, you see a lot of Doric columns or Tuscan columns. On libraries, you see a lot of Ionic columns, which are like the ones that have like the scroll that go over the top. And then on other more, I don't know, domestic-y buildings, you have a Corinthian column.
Very cool. Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
No, it's just interesting that it's like you were saying, it's sort of a mesh of eras. They're being inspired from a former time, but still putting their own style onto it. Very cool.
I would have to say the Capitol building is more Roman because it's more rounded. Greek is all like they hadn't figured out how to do the arch yet, so
it's all angles.
It's all like
the pediments sit on the columns like this.
Yeah.
Rather than the arch being between the.
So when you see more arches, that's the more Romans, because the Romans figured out how to make an arch, which is fun. So even though the Capitol building does not trace its line back to an exact Greek or Roman style necessarily, it's more. I would say more slightly more Roman just because of the large dome, which you don't see that much in Greece, but you see more in Rome.
Right.
The domes, which. The same principle of the arch goes into a dome. It's just intersecting arches.
And yeah, developing those, especially those early buildings in America's capital, they really wanted to be seen as the new republic. Literally the new republic. So they're hearkening back not only ideologically and in their forms of government politically, but architecturally to reflect everything. And it's this wonderful mix. And Jefferson, is probably the perfect. He put in a design for the new Capitol that was, of course, Palladian, and he did it anonymously so that it would be a fair chance. And it was turned down, and he was very upset. So then he went and built the University of Virginia to look like the plan.
Nice.
And it is and its main campus is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is different. Jefferson had such a unique take on architecture. There is actually a style subset that is Jeffersonian architecture, which he used at Monticello, Poplar Forest, and the University of Virginia.
Very cool.
And it also inspired some other people to follow in his same footsteps of architecture. And even going forward, when they're making monuments, Abraham Lincoln Memorial, that's a Greek temple. That's
straight
just
up.
a Greek temple,
Yep.
and Abraham Lincoln
Wow.
is the deity.
That is really
Yeah.
funny. I have never thought about it that way. That's awesome.
Because if you go back to, what is it? I always get Pantheon and Parthenon mixed up. I think it's the Parthenon.
Yes, in Greece.
Yes, in Greece.
Yes.
It looks almost very similar. It has columns all the way around this building, which then has the temple fronts on either side. We call them temple fronts, but those are the sides, actually, of the temple. And then you go up the steps, and usually there's a statue of the deity in the temple.
Right.
For us, it is Abraham Lincoln. Or even the Jefferson Memorial, even though it's a little more rounded, so it's a little more Roman.
A little more Republican.
A little more Republican, a little more rounded, a little more Roman. Giant statue of Thomas Jefferson surrounded by columns.
I love it. Now, going back to some Russian history, and Marie, I think you'll be excited about this one. Alma on Facebook says, can you talk about Anastasia? My 9-year-old is now obsessed with her after seeing the play.
Yes. So the play, the musical that just went to Broadway based off of the movie from the 90s is an interesting take on the story and the legend of Anastasia, because it's the legend of Anastasia. The movie and the play that it's based off of, pure conjecture, pure legend, almost fantasy. For a long time, people did think that maybe Anastasia did survive this terrible tragedy that happened to the Romanovs as they were executed in their basement after the revolution by the Bolsheviks.
Tragedy. Yes.
Well,
Tragedy or
I feel like I need some context. I mean, I've seen Anastasia the movie when I was a kid, but all I know is princess escape alive. That's about my knowledge. So for
Picture
those
it,
of us
Moscow, 1917.
Faded.
Go in. It's the Russian Revolution. World War I is still kind of happening. Russia has pretty much kind of pulled out because they're having their own internal problems. You have two...
They've deposed the Tsar.
Yes.
So a it's not a communist government yet, but a nationalist government has overthrown the Tsar and that government, and they've put them into jail.
Yes.
And so then the communists overthrow the Kerensky government, and that's when they go pay a visit to the Tsar and his family.
So the Tsar and his family have kind of been under palace arrest for years at this point, some nicer than others, and but at this point they have been moved several times, and they're under like house arrest in different places because they keep moving them because they're afraid that people will come rescue them. So it comes to a point where they decide the only way they're going to really win this revolution is if you kill the already deposed Tsar, because as long as he's alive, there's a flicker of hope for the other people. So they take them all down to the basement, and they shoot all of them.
Oh, that's horrible.
Neutralize the threat.
So Anastasia, her 3 sisters, mother, little brother, and father are dead. Now, again, like I said, now they're martyrs for the cause. They end up being canonized as saints in the Eastern Orthodox Church, which I think that comes later.
That's a little late, yeah.
Comes later. But what now? You still want to hope maybe the youngest daughter, Anastasia, escapes this terrible fate somehow. Some of the conspiracy theories are that they had diamonds stuffed down their corsets because they were trying to like escape with jewels, and then like instead of the bullet hit the diamond, and diamond being such a hard substance, it bounced off, which that didn't happen. But another interesting thing is archaeologically. That one.
Yeah, that's hard to say.
They dug stuff up.
They dug stuff up from the ground. So they tried to get rid of the bodies, because now they have a lot of bodies. So they tried to decompose them quickly. like with acid.
Oh, Breaking Bad style, I see.
Yes. But this is Breaking Bad in the 1900s, so it doesn't actually work that great. So you can still tell, like, the
Breaking Bad. Yes.
Yes. Very bad.
But the thing is, it seems like they were missing, like, one of the bodies, maybe? But again, you have an incomplete data source of decomposed bodies that they then dug up 100 years after they tried to decompose them quickly. But when that happens, they think that they're missing the youngest daughter, Anastasia, which confirms some rumors that were heard back in like the early 1900s that maybe she escaped. So now they're missing a body. It seems like the legends are true.
Wouldn't it be great if that sweet young little girl wasn't shot in the back of the head?
Yeah. But then they keep excavating and they find that for some reason most of the family was buried kind of in this mass grave here, and then like 10 feet over the other two, a daughter and the youngest son were buried like over for some reason.
Wow.
But people claimed to be Anastasia, at different points in history, for all the reasons, for popularity, for a chance at becoming famous and gaining wealth from that. Also paints a gigantic target on their back, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah,
but the grandmother did escape to France, so that is trying to pretend to be this old lady's grandchild would then endear you to the very rich old lady. So some people would also do it for money.
Well, Alma, I hope you can explain that tragedy to your 9-year-old and that they will understand that the movies just aren't like history. But it is fun with historical fiction to really imagine what if. And
one of the other fun theories about that I think is interesting is there was one it seemed like the body that was missing that they then end up finding was actually not Anastasia, but Anastasia's like one older sister, Maria or Marie.
Oh.
So I thought that was also interesting.
Marie, are you
That's it!
The Duchess?
Yes.
She was put into stasis in 1922. And we resurrected her to make her the director of education here.
That is so
Georgia
funny.
History Center.
Let's
make a movie about that.
We should.
Alma said that she ran in to listen, so well, I hope you at least found that fascinating. It is fascinating.
It is.
Maybe you'll be it's kind of like the same kind of interest as like true crime,
it's true crime and royalty all put into one big basket.
Exactly.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And if you're interested, there's actually I think a movie made in the 1950s about kind of the same thing. But it's with real people. It's not the animated one.
Yeah.
Where it basically is the same plot with a little less Rasputin.
Speaking of Rasputin, that was also a question. I don't know much about him either, so let's dive into Rasputin. What's his deal? What's his story?
Let's see if we can put it in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yes.
So the the Tsarina, what was her name?
Alexandria.
Thank you, Alexandria. Was somewhat of she had strong religious fervor, and Rasputin was a priest who could allow her to not only use her spirituality and religion to see things, but could help control other aspects of the royal family and the royal government. And so, being Alexandria's right-hand man, he had an inordinate amount of power over the Tsar, over the household, over the government, things like that. No one liked him. Well, practically no one liked him.
She liked him.
She thought it was awesome, and apparently he had this stare. He could quasi-cast spells. He apparently, according to all the literature of the time, was absolutely irresistible to women.
If you ever see a picture of him, you will question this.
Let me pull one up for us.
It's scary.
I'm not, but I'm not making that. People said, "Oh, when you're in his presence, you can't resist him. He's amazing."
Also, a very good point that has been, I think, a little glossed over. The youngest boy that they called Nicky, he was son of Nicholas II, or the third.
Second.
Second. Had a blood condition. hemophilioma, which means when you bleed, your blood doesn't clot. So if you can bleed out very easily, it was very easy for him to bruise. It was very painful for him, and this is something that a lot of the great-grandchildren of Queen Victoria had that she passed on. They didn't know. This is the early 1900s. Medicine is just kind of coming about as we know it, like modern medicine. And Rasputin was able to alleviate his suffering.
Boo.
He's terrifying.
You know, I think with
if I were a woman, I would say, wow, can I get a date with him?
Oh, yeah. I mean, hey, come on. If you put him in, like, a flannel shirt and, like, put that hair back in a nice man bun, like...
The 20th century's first hipster?
I'm not convinced this is actually a picture of the actual Rasputin.
Oh, you don't think so? That's what Wikipedia said.
Really?
Maybe he
There's a
had
couple
some
more
rougher
of him
days.
doing, like, his eyeballs at the
There's a
the
couple
camera.
more that are even creepier.
Yeah.
Oh,
But he was taken out during the Kerensky revolt.
Attempted. Several times. He wouldn't die.
Yeah.
Wow. Now,
They
Because he was magic.
They
attempted
poisoned
by,
him.
like,
They shot him. He still did not die. They put him into a bag, threw him into a river.
He's magic.
They
That's
then
the point.
found his body several miles down. He did not die instantly. They found him frozen trying to crawl out of the bag.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Wow. A fascinating person as well. Alma also asked, was the play or film you're referencing called Clothes Make the Woman? Are you familiar with that?
I don't think
It's about Anastasia.
It might be that one. It was
yeah.
a very long time ago that I saw it.
Right.
But they called her, it wasn't Anastasia in the movie. They pronounced it like the actual Russian.
And Alma also says that her daughter wants to know if you're going to do more American Girl stuff, and
Yes!
believe me, I'm sure that's in our future. If you're unaware, we have done 2 live streams with Marie where she goes through the historical context of American Girl dolls, and it's super fun.
It's so fun.
Yeah, we're going to have a whole new docket of things coming up in January, so
Yes,
keep
we're
an
so
eye on our
excited.
website and on our Facebook, and you're going to love it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we have
so much
we have
good stuff.
so many good stuff, so much good stuff. So let me see if we have any more questions. We are nearing the end of the hour, so if you have a question for Marie or Glenn, please let us know. Karen says the animated Anastasia was based on the 1956 feature with Ingrid Bergman.
That's the one.
Ah, okay, that's what you're talking about. Fox
Yes.
Studio was trying to start their own animation studio at the time and also remade The King and I as an animated feature. Oh, thank you for that little trivia.
Huh.
That's
I
awesome.
actually have the animated King and I.
Is it good?
I liked it, yes.
Is it Joel Brenner good?
Well, before while we wait for any last questions, I'd love to tell folks what's coming up on our live stream schedule. And for the rest of December, tomorrow, we have one of my reruns where I portray a Rosie during World War II. There was actually a gigantic facility to make B-29 bombers, which are the flying things. They're the big old airplanes. And so I'm portraying a Rosie that worked in one of those factories here in Georgia, in Marietta, the Bell Bomber factory. And that was a really fun live stream. So that's a rerun you can watch tomorrow at 2 p.m. on either our YouTube or our Facebook page. And then if you are a member, or if you become a member of the Northeast Georgia History Center for as little as $3 a month or $35 a year.
Can I go to the website and find out how to do that?
You sure can. Go to www.negahc.org. I'll put it in the chat too. To become a member, and our members' live streams are really fun. They're usually a bit more niche topics, and on December 18th, that's coming up this Friday, we're going to be talking about Victorian era Christmas traditions. So without giving too much away, Marie, what are the types of things that are Christmas traditions that come from the Victorian era specifically?
Yes, so there are some things that come specifically from the Victorian era, but really the Victorian era just popularized a lot of old traditions that had kind of fallen to the wayside, that were from Yule, and we'll be talking about, there were several social factors that really came together to catapult Christmas to this giant icon that we know today. It was really just a religious celebration. Christians would go to church, but
nice and low key.
it was very low key. Like it was still happening on December 25th, but it was just very much like okay, that was nice. Yay.
On to Boxing Day.
On to the next thing. Like, businesses wouldn't really close. It would just be, it wasn't a national holiday like it is today in England or America. It was just kind of okay, so some people went to church and then had a nice dinner, and that was lovely. But it was not like the Christmas that we know today. Until the Victorian era, where we have the publishing of A Christmas Carol, we have a German prince come to Buckingham Palace, and the Germanic people were very much more still into the traditions of Yule and had taken a lot of the Yule traditions and meshed them with Christmas traditions. So then that was even brought and then into Buckingham Palace in England. And then there was this picture of Victoria, the children, Albert decorating this tree, and then everyone's like, I gotta have one.
You gotta get a tree.
Gotta have one. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that, some other interesting, more interesting things such as the boar's head tradition. I'm not sure if anyone else knows about that.
I understand that is the rarest.
That's cool.
My mom was in it.
Nice.
So we will be talking about that on Friday, as well as caroling. Where does that come from? Because that's a lot of fun. We did a whole program about it. So we'll be talking more about caroling. We'll be talking about Christmas decorations, the holly, the ivy, evergreens, all of that good stuff. Santa Claus. How did we get Santa Claus? Where did he come from? The North Pole?
The answer may surprise you.
The answer may surprise you.
So join us for that. That's going to be this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I have put a link if you're interested in becoming a digital member. Again, just $3 a month or $35 a year minimum. You're welcome to give us more, and we would certainly appreciate that. But we'll end it there today, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. And Alma in the chat said thank you. We have been enjoying your live streams from San Diego.
Wow.
We hope to go to Savannah soon to visit Juliet Lowe's home and make a side trip visit to you guys. Oh, we would love that.
Man, that would be awesome.
That'd be so cool. And
I guess if you're in San Diego, you might as well stop here on the way to Savannah.
Yeah, right. Yes.
That would be great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Marie, for joining us. Marie will
so
certainly
fun.
be back. And we will see you hopefully in our next live stream. And we won't have Lo-Fi next week because we are all going to enjoy a nice break after a very busy season of webcasts and live streams and that telethon and everything. So very much looking forward to that. But we hope you all have a wonderful holiday season. And if you missed out on our virtual family day that happened this past weekend, we had a lot of great programs about winter holidays. So our theme was Frontier Christmas. So you can go back to either our Facebook page or our YouTube channel to check out those. All right, guys, thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye.